More now on today's top story, the indictments of Donald Trump's company and one of its senior executives. If there's anyone who understands what Trump's CFO Allen Weisselberg is going through right now, it is Michael Cohen, who was also indicted for charges related to Trump, though he pled guilty, unlike Weisselberg, who, at least for now, says he plans to fight the charges. I'm joined now by Michael Cohen, personal attorney to Donald Trump and author of Disloyal and the host of the Mea Culpa podcast. And Michael, let's start there. Give us a sense of what it's like to be Allen Weisselberg today.
Yeah, it's probably not a good feeling. First of all, the handcuffs don't really feel great on your, on your wrists. Second of all, it's very surreal when you're being perp walked to the judge's chambers in order to hear charges that are going to be brought against you. I've often said that, there's a big difference between when you're under investigation and then you're formally indicted, as what I went through and now what Allen Weisselberg is going through. Because the stakes are now real. Before, they're not real. You sit there, you walk around, you go out with your family, and you wonder what they're going to come up with. Well, now you know what they're coming up with, and you know that this is just the tip of the iceberg. Nobody should realistically believe for a second that the indictment that came down today is the end-all, be-all. It is not. The district attorney, Cyrus Vance, along with Mark Pomerantz, have substantially more documents and more indictments will be coming as a result.
I want to get into that more in a second, but I want to get your reaction to this Politico reporting that Donald Trump is thrilled that the indictment was not against him, that it was against Weisselberg and his company. What do you make of that?
Of course he is, right? Because Donald Trump doesn't care about anyone or anything other than himself. What's going to happen? All of a sudden, you're going to have Donald Trump standing up and saying, "Wait, it's like the Shaggy song. It wasn't me." And then next thing you know, he's going to turn around. He's going to be pointing, "Allen, you should have known. You're my CFO. Understand, Allen Weisselberg is not a CPA. He's a bookkeeper." And then what they're both going to do, knowing frickin' frack, as I described them in my book, Disloyal, they're going to turn around, they're going to point to Mazars, to the accountant at Mazars and say, "Whoa, you knew this and you should have been warning us," because that's all that they're good at, is deflecting their illegalities onto somebody else. It wasn't me, it's him. And if it's not him, look at him. But Donald doesn't care if it's going to be Allen or it's going to be the accountants at Mazars or somebody else. It doesn't matter as long as it's not him. It's just an amazing, way about him, where, again, he'd rather it be his children than be himself.
Yeah, we had a former prosecutor on earlier who said that and I think you've made this point before, that there are these millions of documents. There's just a ton of documentation that is the real star of this case, not necessarily Weisselberg. What do you mean by that? What kind of documents do you think there are out there, and how damaging could they be?
Well, I know the documents because I've spent more than 10 occasions with the district attorney. So I'm very familiar. And one of the things that we know that they got as a direct result of my House Oversight Committee hearing and then my participation when I was still at Otisville with the district attorney is his tax returns. And there's 1 million pages just right there. Then, of course, we also know that there were documents that were taken by Rudy, were taken from Rudy's electronic devices that, of course, also deal with Donald Trump. And if it deals with Donald Trump and there's any money involved, Allen Weisselberg is attached to it. It's just that simple. But here's the interesting thing, and I've said this on other shows now. Allen is not the target. He's going to be collateral damage, but he's not the target. And he's also not the end-all, be-all to this investigation. There are others who can testify to the information that the district attorney is going to need, myself included. There's that information that we can testify to that would show the illegality and the culpability by the various different individuals, from Allen to Don Jr. to Eric to Ivanka to Donald himself. So, there's also other individuals, other executives at the Trump Organization that receive the same type of benefits, these apartment, these car benefits at the Trump Organization. Matt Calamari, as an example. So he's not the only one that's getting it. So this indictment is going to be much larger. It's going to be obviously much broader in its scope. And despite the fact that Donald wants to now sit there and say, if this is it, then they got nothing, they have nothing. That's just typical Donald Trump talk. What he's thinking is that he's going to say it. He's going to get his lawyers who got up and they said the exact same thing. They were appealing to a party of one. And he thinks that the more that people say it, the more it'll become a reality. But here's the truth, and we know this, Joy. It's not true. And the district attorney is not interested or impressed with Donald's choices of counsel, and it's not going to end well. And, I've made a lot of predictions, many on this show, many on others. I've been right pretty much most of the time. It's not going to end well for any of them.
Allen Weisselberg reportedly has had conversations with Donald Trump and has been in touch with him. When you were facing this same situation, did Donald Trump try to induce you to stay loyal? And do you think that that's a possibility here with Allen Weisselberg? And do you think Weisselberg will stay loyal to him and go to jail for him?
Yeah. So let me start with the last part. No, nobody wants to go to jail. It's an ugly place. Even if you're at Otisville, satellite camp, it's an ugly place. Being away from your wife, being away from your children, being away from the rest of your family and your friends, it's soul wrenching. And Allen is 74 years old. He has no interest in spending his golden years in any institution. Remember, it's not federal, it's state. So it's not as allegedly luxurious as a federal camp. Then on top of that, will he turn? He'll have no choice because they're also going to bring in his children. Because Barry worked for the company and Jack was involved in lending through Ladder Capital to the company. So the answer is no. He doesn't want to go. And will he end up flipping? Unless he's stupid, then he'll flip. I mean, who in their right mind? And understand, Donald will not go to prison if he could blame somebody else, and that's including Allen. So Allen has to understand he's by himself, and that's what happened to me. This answers the first part of your question. The last time I spoke to Trump was the day of the raid. That's it. It was and then after that, I started listening to various different people telling me that this is exactly what's going to happen, and it did. He ran away from me, and allowed me to
pay the
do
price
what I'm doing
for his
right
crimes.
now. Yes.
Absolutely. Well, Michael Cohen, always appreciate you being on the show. Thank you very much.